what will be his move. He goes d4 and opening up with the queen pawn. Will he also play the London system, which has bishop f4 next coming up, or will he go for the main lines? Will be interesting to see. Richard brings his knight out to f6, and Pragg now can go to c4 or play bishop f4. He goes pawn to c4, so he's going for the main lines here. Interesting to see what Richard will play at the top level. The most popular moves are e6 and g6. These are played a lot. Richard goes for g6 today, which shows that he is in fighting mood. In the first round, Richard drew his game against Gukesh. Then he drew his next game as well against Bartel, and now he's on 1 out of 2. So he wants to play for a win here, even with black, and goes for the King's Indian defense. Whoa, this is going to be exciting. e4, Pragg captures the center. d6, and is Pragg going to play f3, which leads to Zamish system? Is he going to play knight f3, the classical system, or what move is he going to opt for? He goes for h3. Very interesting move, because you know what the point of h3 is? It's more prophylactic. You're taking control of the g4 square, and in many instances you want to go for g4 ideas. So very, very interesting, and also preparing bishop e3 not to be hit by knight g4. So bishop e3, queen d2, many ways to play here. In general, h3 is a useful move in the opening. Pragg brings his bishop out to e3, presses the clock. Knight f3 was also a normal move here, bringing the knight out, but with bishop e3 he clears the bishop, then queen comes up, and long castle is very, very normal. Richard comes back to the board and brings his knight out to c6. This is provocative chess by him, because yes, while he is putting pressure on the central pawn, Pragg can actually push the knight away, and he does it. He pushes his knight away to d5, and Pragg is still in his prep, it seems. Knight e5, knight comes forward, and now Pragg can push it away even further. Yes, f4. You will see that h3 is such a useful move because the knight cannot come here. So Richard goes back to d7. Now, of course, you play this in a way that you say with black that white is overextended, and I'm going to hit the center later with the pawn breaks. But knight e2 is such a classy move because he's going to put his knight on g3 and control the center with both his pieces here. c6 played by black, and next up we can just play our knight to g3, and you can slowly realize that actually Richard does not have too much of counterplay here, because e6 now is impossible because I just take and d6 pawn is hanging. So he plays knight e8, maybe just to defend d6, so that to prepare the break with e6. But Pragg has a lot of space and has a very nice position. Bishop e2, very, very calm, cool, collected. He wants to go castle next. White seems to be doing very well. e6 played. Wow. e6 on the board, and Richard doing it right because he is low on space. He tries to fight for it. Pragg takes the pawn. Again, interesting decision here by Pragg to take on e6. Black has to recapture back with fe6. He takes back, and now there are two ways to go. Most natural is to castle. The other is to go queen d2 and long castle and play aggressively. But Pragg goes for the third option. He plays h4. Wow, he's going for an all-out attack here with h4, h5. Bishop f6, nice move by Richard. Two things. First of all, he's attacking the pawn. Second is whenever h5 comes, there is g5 that can be played. Very cool move, bishop d3, because if you take the pawn now, I can move my queen to g4, defending this and attacking here. So clearly you can't take that. Knight c5 played, but can't we simply take and push our pawn here? Maybe there is bishop h4, but after queen g4 taking here, it can get really nasty. But Pragg decides to move his bishop back to c2, which is maybe more human than just taking on c5. Now Richard moves his queen to a5. He's trying to put pressure here with the bishop and the queen. And white simply moves his queen up, defends it. In a way, you can see that white is taking all the care on the queen side and the center before going for h5 break. Now queen b4 puts pressure on c4 and b2. So both the pawns are under pressure, and white can simply castle it out now. That seems like the best move here. Yes, Pragg does it. He's not afraid of bishop takes c3 business because he can just take it and his king would be pretty safe here on b1. So that's the plan, and Richard now takes the pawn on c4. In a way, white's position is completely crushing now after the move h5. It's such a strong and powerful move that it's opening up things, and Pragg goes for it. So by safeguarding his king, by safeguarding his center, Pragg is ready now for the onslaught. Look at black's pieces, they're absolutely passive. Richard goes for b5. Makes sense to play this way, but Pragg now pushes his pawn to e5. Fantastic chess. He's opening up his bishop here, also clearing the e4 square. Pawn takes pawn. The knight is jumping into e4 next. Pragg takes bishop c5. Ooh. Queen comes and takes. This is completely winning position for white. Now knight e4, this knight or this knight both look very, very strong. You can even insert pawn takes pawn in between. He plays the other knight to e4. Now attacking the queen, also planning to remove one of the defenders of the black king. Rapport is planning to bring his queen back. In effect, if you see what has transpired here after queen e7 is the fact that this bishop is passive, this knight is passive. It's just completely lost. Like knight f6 taken, and Rapport must take with the queen. The only hope that Rapport has is queen coming here and trading it. If Pragg had his king on b1, this would have been totally winning, but yet he can just take the pawn. He plays for g3, which is an interesting move. He's telling Rapport that I'm not going to allow you to trade queens. I'm ready to give up a pawn here. So after takes, black does not have a move to trade queens as of now, and Pragg can use this time to take here on g6. So he's opening up his rook and his bishop. Meanwhile, the white king is snugly placed on c1 nicely, while the black king is getting completely obliterated. fg3 now threatening once again to trade here with queen f4. Pragg pushes his pawn to g7. He's just saying that if you take here with any of the ways, my rook is entering along with the bishop. So Rapport tries to save it with rook f7. If you take with the bishop now, I can take the pawn with my king. So Pragg actually moves in with his rook, and essentially what he's saying is after rook g7, there's this very powerful move knight e4 attacking the queen, and then that's winning for white. e5 played by Rapport. Two things: queen f4 idea, bishop opening up, check comes in, king takes, and now a very simple move by Pragg. He's won the piece. Yes, black has 3 extra pawns here, 1, 2 and 3, but these are all scattered and not so good. Also the king is very weak. Queen f4 played. Now you can take here and move your rook in, which is slightly difficult to calculate because then black has 2 connected pawns, but it's not dangerous because you can get here. You can also play your bishop to e4, which is a very safe and solid move. Pragg has 5 minutes to work this out. Rook h1, terrible move. He blunders big time. Let's look at their expressions. Has Rapport seen it? He's watching this. Pragg has blundered a big one. Why? Because after queen takes queen, king takes queen, rook moves in. That's what he's done. Takes. And look at Pragg there. Absolutely stunned with what he has done. He's not even writing down his move. He's not moving. He has 2 minutes, 50 seconds. But this is game has completely turned around. Look at Pragg shaking. King takes, and now all of a sudden all the hard work, of the last 27 moves is completely lost, because now if you go back king c1, which was what Pragg wanted to do, there is check, king here, bishop comes out with a check, and you lose the rook. Ooh, this is terrible. If you go king d1, there is bishop g4 discovered. If king d3, bishop f5. So king does not have a good square to go to defend this bishop. Unbelievable. Pragg plays king e3, but now after rook c2, he is actually not at all winning, but he can still hold it. He can give a check, he can take the pawn, it's still a draw. But Pragg, I mean, must be so dejected after totally winning. Oh, rook h8, massive blunder here from a drawn position. Now this is losing. You can see Rapport has seen the brilliant move here. Pragg's idea is to put the rook back and try to control this pawn from behind, also try to win this bishop. But Rapport has a brilliant move here. Bishop e6. The game has turned around completely. Bishop controls this. If you take the rook, then g2 is coming. You can look at Pragg there. A little boy from the futures group is seeing what's transpiring there. Wow, what a moment there, and what a turnaround in last 3 moves. From a completely winning position, Pragg has landed in a completely lost position. This is insane. Bishop e6, such a strong move here, controlling here. You can't even take this bishop because the rook would hang, and if you take the rook, g2 is coming in. Praggnanandhaa can't believe it. That's why chess is so tough. That's why chess is difficult. You know, you build up the position logically for moves and moves, hours and hours, and then one mistake and it's turned around completely. For Pragg, his first mistake led the game to a draw. The second one now leads him to a totally lost position. g2, the pawn cannot be stopped in any way. Just look at it. The bishop does a phenomenal job of stopping any checks on g8, and the pawn is queening. Spare a thought for this youngster. He played really well, but hats off to Richard Rapport for just not giving up, for all the time trying to hang in there. Brilliantly done there. Praggnanandhaa extends his hand in resignation.